Hello, I'm excited to be with you today. My name is Jeff Reichard. I am the VP of Public Sector and Compliance Strategy in the Office of the CTO at Veeam Government Solutions. We're going to be talking today about Zero Trust Cyber Resiliency and how Zero Trust Cyber Resiliency using Veeam as one of the tools in your toolbox can help you achieve both reliable data privacy and cybersecurity, especially as mission workloads move to new platforms and new environments. So let's dive in. The conversation is especially relevant because we at Veeam have been hearing from our federal customers for the past 18 months plus exactly how fast the pace of transformation is that they've been dealing with. This quote from Lieutenant General B.J. Shwedo really struck me last year. He talks about rolling out a remote work program for employees that might in the past have taken months and years to spec out, plan, and execute in a matter of days and weeks. And I've heard exactly the same thing across all DoD branches and civilian branches of the federal government. For that matter, I've heard the same thing from Veeam's state and local customers as well. I had one city CIO say, yeah, we had a 4-year remote work rollout plan and we accomplished it in less than 1 week. They did it in 4 days. That's what they were forced to do. And as all of you know who have lived the extraordinary upheaval and transformation from the past year, it has been a challenging year, and there's been a lot that's changed. That isn't going away anytime soon. Another point that General B.J. Shwedo made in the same discussion is that essentially we're going to be dealing with the same kinds of transformations and adaptations that we've made around work and around the mission going forward. When we talk here at Veeam with our federal customers, we hear basically 4 directions that they perceive that we're going to be looking at going into the coming year. And of course, the first of those is continued pandemic response. 2022, unfortunately, is going to continue featuring the disruptions, the direct response to the pandemic, and all the follow-on effects that the federal government has been dealing with for the past, year and a half, close to 2 years at this point. That, of course, has significant ramifications for the pace of transformation. The pace of transformation is not going to be slowing in the coming year. We've had to make giant IT transformational changes around remote work, around changing the way that we execute the mission and the places where mission data is kept and acted upon, and in remote citizen services. Of course, we have to do all of that while still dealing with resource constraints, both budgetary and staff. Those have not gone anywhere, and we still have to work with those. And in large part aggravated by the transition to remote work and remote citizen services, we're now dealing more than ever with a threat landscape on the cyber side that we have to take seriously and proactively address. The cyber side in particular is something that we're going to be talking about today when we talk about Zero Trust Cyber Resiliency. And one critical feature to think about, tying back to resource constraints, is that you want the tools in your organization's toolbox to be as simple as possible and to cover as many workloads as possible so that you reduce the attack surface in terms of applications, in terms of different management interfaces and permissions required in the environment. Now, most of you that know Veeam probably know us as a leading enterprise backup company. Veeam has led for many years in the backup of virtualized workloads, particularly on VMware. And of course, we've now expanded that to include Hyper-V, to include Nutanix AHV, and to include Red Hat virtualization. But as our customers' workloads have moved to new environments, Veeam's capabilities have grown as well. We now support cloud-native backups for all of the 3 leading hyperscale platforms, including the government versions of those. So in AWS, in Azure, in Google Cloud environment, you have options for direct hypervisor-native, cloud-native backup, including the ability to take that backup data and move it between clouds or on-prem. That extends both to cloud-based and on-prem Kubernetes environments with Veeam's Kasten K10 product, which is the leading product for backing up containerized Kubernetes implementations. And of course, it also extends to software as a service implementations with things like Microsoft 365, very relevant to our federal customers, and Salesforce, which is increasingly on its public sector side relevant to our federal customers. On-prem workloads, typical enterprise workloads, have also been supported in a robust way for many years. That includes all of the common database applications that you would expect to see. It also includes unstructured data and the backup of physical workloads. Now, the reason that I stress this, again, so much is that a big part of secure migration, secure IT transformation, is making sure that when I do move mission data to a new environment to be stored and to be acted on and processed, that I always know that I can get that data back to a known good state. It's also increasingly critical for our customers to know that if they move that data, for example, up to a cloud environment, they can get it back on-prem or cross-cloud. And those, again, are key features of what Veeam offers. Now, when we talk about cybersecurity, it's important also to recognize that Veeam learned years ago that if you're in the backup business, you're in the security business. And we have a very mature practice around cybersecurity. Veeam's Chief Information Security Officer has an extensive SES government information security background. He served in cyber leadership roles in both the Department of Energy and the Department of Homeland Security. And he has really been instrumental in working with Veeam's development team to drive the principles of the NIST cybersecurity framework into the product at all levels. Now, when you think about the 5 domains of the NIST cybersecurity framework, you might think of protect and recover as being logical areas that Veeam would play in, and that's true. But Veeam actually has extensive capabilities around all 5 domains of the NIST cybersecurity framework, around identifying what your assets are, and then, of course, protecting them, but also detecting when an adversary on the network or some unexpected event might be happening that would compromise mission data, and then responding to that compromise and recovering in the fastest and most secure possible way. Okay, lots of capabilities around this. We could dig into this in detail with folks later on. If you're interested, please do stop by the virtual booth and ask us about it. But these are key capabilities that Veeam brings to market. The topic of today's talk, though, is Zero Trust. And when we talk about Zero Trust, I'm going to refer back to something that Veeam's Chief Information Security Officer, Gil Vega, also is fond of saying. And that's that if you want a secure IT environment now, it's no longer sufficient to assume that I've got good firewalls and good perimeter defenses and that anything inside those defenses is going to be okay. You have to secure your environment in such a way that you basically assume a state of constant breach. Assume that an adversary has already penetrated the network, and then take the steps required to make sure that my production mission data and, critically, my backup data is also safe, even if a threat actor has been on the network for a period of weeks or even months and has managed to compromise administrative credentials. The term Zero Trust is bandied about a lot these days. I thought it was simplest to just use the definition that that NIST in the Department of Commerce has come up with. We follow the NIST cybersecurity framework. It seems like a good definition to use. And for those of you that aren't familiar with it, it is basically just a set of cybersecurity paradigms that take the defenses, as I mentioned before, from static exterior network-based defenses to much more holistic control and zero trust around users, around assets, and around resources. There's an old saying, it was popularized by Ronald Reagan in terms of arms control, that you needed to trust but verify. We've now gotten much more to the paradigm that you need to not trust and also verify if you want to make sure that you keep your information security environment safe. Let's look at what Gartner has to say on this subject, specifically around backup data. This graphic is from a white paper published by Gartner back in September of last year, and it was titled, reasonably enough, How to Protect Backup Systems from Ransomware Attacks. Gartner makes a number of good points and has some good recommended best practices in this white paper. But one of the key points that they make in this paper is that backup data needs to be protected from 2 specific types of threats. It needs to be protected from being deleted because as the threat actor is on the network for longer, which is the x-axis in this diagram, the mission impact of their activities on the network, which is the y-axis in this diagram, escalates in a corresponding way. They manage to penetrate more systems, they manage to escalate their privileges on more systems, and so they're of course going to be targeting backups because they know that backups would allow the mission to continue and would take away any bad effects from their attack. And so it's critically important that you protect your backups, especially the longer that the threat actor's on the network. The other point that they made is because at this point the dwell time, the length of time that a threat actor might be active on the network before being discovered, can run to weeks or even months, sometimes longer for very, very skilled, persistent threat actors. You need a way to be able to, again, don't trust and also verify. Recover the data that you need from its most current version, but don't recover malware that might have been present in your environment long before any direct attack on the data began. When you do that, you don't want to reinfect your environment. We're going to talk a little bit more now about specific Veeam capabilities that help organizations, help our federal customers to navigate that. If you've talked with Veeam before, you've probably heard someone mention the 3-2-1 rule for backups. That just means that you need to have 3 different copies of your data, the production copy and 2 backup copies. And those need to be on at least 2 different types of media. It's not good enough, as I've seen in more environments than I would care to mention, to have your backup copy sitting on the same storage array that your production data is sitting on. It's also not good enough for customers who have migrated to cloud environments to rely solely on snapshots in that cloud environment, because if you have a significant issue around data integrity in that environment, it could compromise the snapshots there as well. So you need different, wholly separated types of media for reliable backups. And finally, and again, getting to cloud environments, one of those needs to be off-site. That can be simply to another availability zone of the same cloud, or it can be to a different cloud or back on-prem. All those are good, viable options. Veeam has expanded the 3-2-1 rule lately to include a couple of additional points. We've kind of made it the data protection zip code. The extra 1 means that 1 copy of your backup data should be immutable. It should be, to put it in more simple terms, unchangeable even by a threat actor who has been on the network, who has escalated privileges, and who may even now have admin privileges to your backup infrastructure. In other words, you need storage that is so resilient that even one of your own backup admins can't delete it before the time period that you've specified expires. And finally, you need a way to make sure, again, going back to the Gartner report and to our saying here, don't trust and also verify, you need a way to make sure that your backups are going to be useful, that they're going to be fit for purpose when you take them. And you need a way to make sure that when you recover them, again, you don't recover malware back into the environment. Fortunately, Veeam has a powerful concept for achieving these ends. That is the Scale-Out Backup Repository, or SOBR. The Scale-Out Backup Repository is just a virtualized pool of storage, including many, many different types of backup storage that could be both on-prem or up in cloud storage providers. And the Scale-Out Backup Repository lets you tier your backup data through high-performing storage resources, presumably local to your production workloads, whether they're in the cloud or on-prem, and then scale those off to less expensive object storage. Again, that object storage could be on-prem. We've got numerous, a couple of dozen at this point, certified providers of on-prem storage that work very, very well with Veeam, or up in the hyperscale cloud. And of course, that also includes archive tiers in the hyperscale public cloud for very, very low cost, long-term retention. What's cool about the Scale-Out Backup Repository is that every level of this diagram includes the ability to add immutability to the picture. It includes the ability to make sure that that data is safe and has been protected in such a way that it can't be changed, again, even by an adversary who has compromised admin credentials. Now, One powerful capability around that area that Veeam added in version 11 is something that we call the hardened Linux repository. For your on-prem workloads, this lets you take a basic commodity Linux server and with a few clicks in the Veeam backup and replication interface, turn it into a fully secure, survivable pool of high-performance storage that you can put backup data on. We're going to talk more about the hardened Linux repository in a minute, but again, that's not your only option. Veeam also has numerous storage integrations that let us help to orchestrate immutable snapshots of your data with vendors that you probably have in the data center. And again, we've got a lot of solutions out there with Veeam certified cloud storage providers, both object storage on-prem and object storage up in the hyperscale cloud. Now, I've talked a lot about worst case scenarios. What do you do? How do you implement zero trust, even if your admin credentials across the environment, including the backup environment, get hacked? But it's important to recognize that traditional role-based access control also plays a significant part in zero trust architectures. We don't want to just defend against the worst possible scenario. We want to make sure that the folks that we have using the tools to secure data get only the correct level of permissions and are trusted to handle data from only the objects and environments that are relevant for them. And Veeam has been a leader in role-based access control and in highly granular and auditable permissions around all data management operations for many years. Again, getting back to the idea, don't trust and verify. When we talk about that wheel before, the NIST cybersecurity framework, I mentioned that Veeam is active in a number of areas of it. I won't dig into all of the capabilities that we've got around that, but I will mention that Veeam has a strong capability around detecting attacks, not just after they've affected your backup data, but in real time. If a threat actor is on the network making changes that affect the production environment, we have capabilities that let you in real time detect that so that you can respond quickly before backup data is compromised and before any more of the mission production environment has been compromised than needed. Okay? These are typically around ransomware, but they're very applicable for other kinds of cyber attacks as well. And we are constantly increasing our capabilities around these areas. When we talk about trust and verify, it's also important to think, as I mentioned with the Gartner study before, about how I make sure that I don't recover malware back into my environment if I have had a threat actor on the network for a couple of months and malware has been present on my production workloads for perhaps 2 or 3 months with backup data that I can't afford to lose, but I can't restore the malware back into my environment. What Secure Restore lets you do, and more importantly, lets your InfoSec team do, is instead of recovering workloads directly back into the production environment, we let you scan that recovered data in real time to make sure that it doesn't include any malware that might have been a 0-day or that you didn't have signatures or heuristics to detect at the time when it first went into place. And you get a number of choices around what to do. If there are no infections found, you can continue the restore. If there's an infection found, you can continue the restore, but isolate that restored data in a sandbox with network turned off so that your InfoSec team can do further remediation and further analysis and make sure that the workload is safe to restore into production. Or if you find something that's completely unexpected, of course, you can abort the restore and go back to the drawing board, scan the data again, and make sure that you've got your protocols in place. Again, at every step, we make sure that we give you the ability to not trust and to verify what's going on in the environment. One of the things that when we talk with customers, they're surprised about when they're recovering from cyber attacks as well, is the length of time that it can take if you have a massive attack to get back up and running in production, to recover fully from having dozens, hundreds, perhaps even thousands of systems compromised in a massive attack. One of Veeam's leading capabilities in this area, and it's been part of the product for many years, is our instant recovery capability. This lets you spin up workloads after you've scanned the data, after you've made sure that the backups are secure and don't have malware on them, to to spin them up in real time from the backup storage as you are recovering those into production. So for your most critical servers, let's say your Active Directory environment, any security related systems, including building security, whatever, that you want to get up and running first in the process of getting production back underway and getting the mission going again, you can run those from backup data as they're being restored into production and switch right over to the production copy as soon as the restore is complete. That is true not just for plain VM workloads, but it also includes database native backups for environments like SQL and Oracle. It includes unstructured data sitting on network attached storage or file servers, and basically, or even just simple disks from a VMware environment that you want to recover just a data disk that you need data from or need to work on. So again, all capabilities that have been in Veeam for quite a long time, and they are continuously enhanced to give you more peace of mind and more options around getting your data back up and running. Now, it's all well enough for us to say that that works well, but recently a large federal systems integrator that does a lot of work, including security implementation and consulting for federal customers, decided to take a look in real detail at what Veeam's hardened Linux repository offered. So this large integrator basically implemented the hardened Linux repository per Veeam's recommendations, and they set one of their own security red teams that does pen testing on federal customers to try to get into the environment, to try to compromise the environment, delete the backups as a ransomware actor, for example, would attempt to do during a ransomware attack. What they found is that the hardened Linux repository lived up to its billing. They were unable to do it. They now recommend the Veeam hardened Linux repository as a very cost-effective commodity, but still ransomware secure tier of on-prem backup storage, and they've implemented it themselves across multiple parts of their environment. When I talk about the testing that's been done around both the hardened Linux repository and Veeam as an organization and the Veeam product, there's a lot more that we can discuss. Veeam is an ISO 27001 certified organization, so our internal IT practices conform to best mission practices around IT security. But the product itself also has been through most of the sorts of certifications that you would expect for a product being used in numerous federal environments. We've got our Section 508 VPAT. We conform to NIST cybersecurity framework and ISO 27001. And the hardened Linux repository itself has been through FINRA and SEC and CFTC, three financial trading organization certification bodies that are part of the federal government on the civ side, has been through testing to show that it is compliant with standards for write once, read many storage used by financial services companies. What that means, of course, is that for organizations that have heavy financial services compliance burdens that they need to cover, one of the responsibilities that they need to meet is the ability to write data that once it's written can absolutely not be deleted for a prescribed period of time. And what's interesting is that that same financial services capability to meet regulatory requirements also makes a perfect repository for ransomware or malware-proof backups. And that's one of the things that our customers on the Fed side use it for all the time, because it is such a good solution in that area. When I talk about our customers in the federal space, I should mention we have over 1,400 active federal customers at this time. Veeam Government Solutions is a well-known and trusted partner for our federal customers, both in the civilian and the DoD side. We have numerous Department of Defense authorities to operate. We're TAA compliant, and we're a documented solution in NIST Special Publication 1800-11 for recovering from ransomware and other destructive events. So we've been around quite a bit, and we're a solution that for data security and for data privacy you can absolutely rely on. But don't take my word for it. Veeam has also been in the Leaders Quadrant of the Gartner Magic Quadrant for the past 5 years, and for the past 2 years we have been at the top of the ability to execute. So industry analysts, the most respected ones out there that evaluate the real-world capabilities of products in the enterprise backup space to protect your data, to keep it safe from cyber attacks, have certified that, yeah, Veeam doesn't just talk the talk, but we can also walk the walk. And in terms of ability to execute and in the real world, keep your data secure, There's no one better to do that than Veeam Government Solutions. So I hope this has been helpful. I hope you enjoy the rest of the show. Please do stop by Veeam's virtual booth and take a look at what we have here for you today and at some of the resources. We're happy to answer any questions that you may have. And best of luck in 2022. Take care.